Hello, my name is Rod Bates and I'm the owner of Koinonia Guide Service. We're a Christian-based fishing guide business here in central Pennsylvania. We specialize in creating family memories on the Susquehanna River, and it's our goal to take you out, expose you to God's wonderful creation, to show you a productive and safe time, again, enjoying God's creation. I've been blessed to have the opportunity to do seminars to various groups in various locations. And oftentimes people ask me after the seminar, do you have this in a book form or in a DVD form? And the answer until now has been no. So today we're going to try to shoot a video for you, and we're going to start out with the basics. Let's talk about things I carry on my boat to make my life simpler on the water. The first thing I would say is I have a pair of braided scissors. These are cut braid, cut mono, very helpful to you. Oftentimes when we're fishing jigs, you might have a painted jig head. And what I do is I carry an awl. You can buy these at any box lumber store. And what you do is you just take your awl and you put it in your eye and you knock out that paint. Can't tell you how many times I see clients take a brand new hook and clean the paint out with that. Kind of defeats your purpose of having a sharp hook if you do that. So this is just a simple tool that I like to carry. It comes in very handy. Oftentimes bass fishing, we will catch walleye. Anytime you're dealing with a walleye or a pike or a toothy critter, catfish, you'll catch them as well. I like to have a jaw spreader. Simple tool, less than $5. It slides into the mouth. You just unhook it. This will open the mouth of the fish. It makes it easier for you to get in there and get those hooks out. Pair of pliers, needle nose pliers, very valuable. This one happens to have a cutter on it as well. Again, anytime you're fishing stick baits or crankbaits, anything with a treble hook, always try to use your pliers. Nothing worse than trying to get a hook out of a fish that you caught and end up hooking yourself because the fish flopped or whatever. So a pair of pliers. Stainless steel works well. They don't rust up on you as much. Also another thing to have, not so much for bass, but when you're, again, if you have a walleye or a toothy critter, we carry the Team Catfish fish grippers. These things are phenomenal. You just make sure you have your clients put it on their hand them the rod or the fish holder with the fish in it. When they go to release it, they just put it in the water, open the jaws, and the fish will release. We use these a lot for catfish. But again, any toothy critter, you definitely want to have these on your boat. It works very well. Always carry a camera, that you can document your fish catch. And also, I like to carry a scale. That way the clients know exactly the weight of the fish, which is important. Many times we catch what we call Angler Award fish here in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission will actually give an angler a citation. A smallmouth bass, for instance, is 19 inches. A channel cat is 24 inches. A flathead is 34 inches. So it goes by length, but the form actually has a spot in it to fill in the weight. So that's a good thing to have. To document your length, obviously bass fishing, walleye fishing, this is the golden rule, works very well. Goes up to about 23 inches. And then, for flatheads, channel cats, you have the roll-out type that are mastic. Put them on your boat and you have them there. So that way it's easy to document your fish catch lengthwise. When it comes to your equipment, I like to carry some Reel Magic on the boat. This will make your line cast better, makes your reels work smoother. Very easy to carry on the boat, doesn't take up much space, and it's valuable to have. Another thing I do is I like to carry a spike it. This is actually a dip and glow in the chartreuse color, and really all you do is you take your lure, you dip it in there, pull it out, and in a matter of seconds it'll dry, but don't immediately pull it out and lay it on your carpet because it will stain, and this stuff is hard to get out. So when you first pull it out, treat it carefully. It'll dry rather quickly. but this will help you when you're fishing sometimes, especially in stained water, to add a little more vivid color to your bait. All the baits I fish, whether it's Yum or whether it's Winco Custom Lures, they're already scented baits. However, I do carry extra scent as well. I like to carry the Yum F2, this is the shad, and I also carry the crayfish. When the fish are on a bait fish bite, I'll use the shad, and when they're on a crawfish bite, I will use the crawfish scent. Another thing to carry, I like to have a fish rag all the time. Again, just makes things convenient. The nets we use, they're a rubber net. It causes less damage to the fish slime. It's easier to get your treble hooks out of. You got to be careful when using that net. It's not a net that you can easily dip into the water and chase a fish. They work better if you kind of keep the net and have the person catching the fish bring the fish to the net. That works very well. When it comes to boat positioning is very important. What I like to do is, on my particular boat, it's a custom built Snyder boat, and what I've done is actually taken the cleats from the front of the boat and I've moved them back more. And I'll explain that to you in a little bit later. We also have plastic on the bottom of our boats. We primarily guide on the Susquehanna River. It's a shallow river, and rocks are everywhere, and people are constantly damaging their boats. The ultra-high molecular weight plastic on the bottom of the boat protects your aluminum. So that's one of the things, upgrades we do to our boats, which makes a huge difference, actually. When it comes to your trolling motor, make sure your trolling motor is sized that it will handle your boat properly. Talk to your boat dealer and have them size that for you. The other thing is, I highly recommend you go no less than a 24-volt trolling motor system. The other thing I highly recommend is that you have an onboard charging system. Many times, let's face it, our schedules are compressed and tight, and when's the best time to fish? Basically whenever you can. So the worst thing that could happen to you is you want to go fishing, an opportunity arose, and you forgot to plug in your boat, and you don't have a trolling motor, so now you're either going to go out there to fish handicap, or you're just going to blow it off. So an onboard charging system, basically when I put my boat, what I call putting it to bed, I back it into the barn. The onboard charging system has a plug right on the boat, so all I got to do is run an extension cord to it. I don't have to drag out a battery charger or anything like that. I put it on there. That onboard charging system will go to a trickle charge once it's charged fully, so I don't have to worry about cooking my batteries. So an onboard charging system to go with your trolling motor system, and again, a 24-volt system. Very, very important. When you're on the water, as we said, our time is limited, so when you're on the water, you want to be as productive as you possibly can. So you don't want to be out there, and I know this as a fact because I used to do it. When I had a 12-volt system when I first started fishing, I would fish conservatively because I was afraid I was going to burn out my battery and then I wouldn't have a trolling motor. The problem with doing that is when you're fishing conservatively or you're worried about your battery and the strength of your battery and your trolling motor, you're not fishing to the best of your ability. So make sure you're sized properly so when you're on the water, you don't have to worry about burning out your trolling motor. If you need to run it on high, you run it on high. If you need to run on medium, you run on medium with no concerns about burning up your battery. So in the summertime, particularly low clear water, boat positioning again is very important. Think stealthy. Those fish are positioned with their heads upriver. Oftentimes in the summertime, I'll see people floating down over on top of their fish. They're running the trolling motor. They're spooking these fish before they even get there. So what I like to do is I like to approach those fish from downriver. And in order to do that, you've got to have a trolling motor sized properly and powerful enough to be able to do that. So you approach the fish from below them, throw up to them, bring the bait to them, just as it naturally would come to a fish normally through the current. We talked about the cleats on the boat. We're fishing primarily Susquehanna River, 4 to 8 foot of water most of the time, sometimes less. However, I'm carrying an anchor that has 100 foot of rope. Seems a little bit silly to do that. That's a lot of extra rope. Why? Well, the point to that is Once I position the boat to where I want it and I am anchored solidly, I can now move that boat without ever lifting the anchor, and I can cover a lot of water. If we're in a particular spot and we're fishing and the bite slows down, what I'll do is I'll release that anchor rope off the center point. I'll put it on the right-hand cleat, and that's going to swing my boat about 10 yards. I can fish that same pocket of water without ever lifting the anchor, but now that bait's in a different position. Pick up 1, 2, 4 more fish maybe, take that rope off the cleat on the right, put it on the cleat on the left. That's going to swing the boat back the other way about 10 yards. Again, now you're fishing that same pocket of water. You've never lifted the anchor. Now what you do is you figure you've exhausted. You use different colors. You use different positions, different size lures, different lures. Okay, now let's back off of that a little bit. Let's leave out maybe 15 feet of line and start fishing that same area of water. And you do that, as long as you're catching fish, keep drifting back until you're out of the fish, then you can raise your anchor. So that allows you to be stealthy and help you. So that's regarding tools to have in your boat. That's regarding boat positioning. Now let's talk about conditions. And these are general rules. So typically in rising water, that's going to push fish tight to cover, be it the shoreline, be it under ledges, be it into the wood tight. General rule, falling water, they're going to get more comfortable, and they're going to, if they're on a shoreline, they're going to get concerned about getting trapped there, so they're going to back off of that shoreline. They're not going to be as tight to the ledges. They're not going to be as tight as the wood. So rising water pushes them tight to cover generally. Falling water, they're going to be further away from that cover. When we have rain and the river is rising, it's rising because the creeks are putting more water in. All that runoff goes into the creeks, flows down, gets into the river rises. However, as those creeks are rising, they're also getting muddy. So what happens is, as they rise, the water comes down into the river. The edges of the river now are going to be muddy. So where do I fish then? Can you catch fish in the mud? Absolutely. However, I'm going to catch more fish if I can fish that current seam between the mud and between the clear water. So right after rain, the shorelines are going to be muddy. I'm going to concentrate in this section of the river between the mud lines. A few days go by, the creeks start to fall, they start to clear up. Now the whole river isn't covered in mud, except the edges of the river now are going to have that clear water pushing in. So now where am I going to fish? I'm going to go back and fish that clear water. Again, these things I'm telling you will help you put a few more fish in the boat. They're not hard, fast rules that you have to abide by. Everybody talks about a golden rule. Maybe their golden rule is, well, I'm only going to fish walleye in low light conditions, or I'm not going to throw topwater in the middle of the day. Those are what they might call their golden rule. My golden rule is I have no golden rules, because the minute you have a golden rule and you put the blinders on and you can't see to do anything differently, you're costing yourself fish. You might, I learned this from clients actually. We'll have a trip, and let's say we're struggling the first hour or two in the morning, and then they'll undoubtedly say, last time I was here we caught fish on the third pier of that bridge down there. Well, that was 2 months ago, and the river conditions were totally different. Those fish aren't there now. But they'll be persistent, and eventually I give in, we go check it, and the fish aren't there. So it's important to have a background to know what the conditions are and what to expect from the fish. So don't have your blinders on, pay attention. Classic example happened to me. I was with a client, it was 1 o'clock, bluebird skies, and he asked me if I had topwater baits. I told him absolutely, but we were catching fish on spinner baits. A little bit of time goes by and he asked me again, do you have a topwater bait? I said, sure. He says, can I throw it? I said, absolutely. I wouldn't do it, but he wanted to. He's the client. He proceeded to put 8 fish in the boat in the next 45 minutes to an hour, where I had maybe 1 or 2, and he was throwing a tiny torpedo, threw it out there, just twitched a little bit, got the blades going. In conditions I never would have thought to fish it, and he caught fish. So don't have the blinders on. So let's talk about water clarity. When choosing lures, if you're in my boat, I've got a rainbow full of colors of lures. Typically, I will put clients on the colors that I think are going to work best. When we do that, I'll be throwing a different color. And that way I know if something changes, we can rapidly adapt to that. General rules again. Doesn't mean this is the only way to fish it, but as a general rule, as a starting point, in clear water, you want to fish more of a clear bait, an opaque bait, or something that blends into the surroundings. If you have stained water, then you want to throw something that's going to have some vibration or have maybe a chartreuse in it, a little bit more vivid. In muddy water, you definitely want to have something with scent, something with rattles, something that's going to throw off a lot of vibration. When the bass can't see, they're going to feed through vibration through their lateral line. So the more vibration you're throwing, the more likely they are to be able to hone in on that bait and strike it accordingly. In muddy water, I like to throw things like black or June bug. Think about this. If you're out at night and it's dark and you can't see very well on the ground, but you look up in the sky, you can see a power line silhouetting against the sky. It's the same thing. If you have that brown background and then you've got a black tube or a black bait in there, that's going to silhouette. It's going to make it easier to see. So in clearer water, that's the best optical conditions for the bass. They can see further, therefore they can see more precisely that what you're trying to trick them is not a real bait. So in clear water, fish faster. Now, you can't fish as fast as you can. You've got to relate it to the water temperature. Bass are cold-blooded, so the colder the water, the lower the metabolism. And we'll talk about that more when we get into jig fishing. So those are some general rules and guidelines. Now what I'd like to do is talk to you about, it's November 7th. We're actually going to take this video out on the water, and we're going to try to implement some tactics that we discussed. So let's discuss those tactics now. We'll get this gear put away and bring out some lures, and we'll talk to you about that. Okay, we talked about it's November 7th. We're going to go out in the water today, and I'm going to talk to you now about what I think we can expect out there today. They're talking about 10-mile-an-hour winds out of the west, northwest. So thinking ahead, I think I want to position the boat east and fish west. Have that wind to my back. It's going to be, the water temperatures are probably going to be low 50s. We talked briefly about metabolisms in a fish, cold-blooded. They'll be slowed down somewhat. So now I'm not going to be throwing crankbaits. I'm not going to be throwing spinnerbaits. I'm going to be primarily jigging. Jigging and I would say a hard jerk bait, a stick bait as we call it. But I want to talk to you about this time of the year, and it's going to continue to get colder. So as the water gets colder, fish move into wintering holes. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take you to a wintering hole, and I'm going to bet you there's probably pushing 20 boats in this spot. I don't know, but we'll see. So fish move to wintering holes. So if we don't like what we see there, we may go either north of that wintering hole or south of it and try to find fish moving into that area. Jig fishing. There's many types of jigs. I primarily fish Winco custom lures, but what we're going to do is go through these lures here that we have laid out here. Let's talk about the heads first. If we're fishing a tube, this is a tube jig with a weed guard. This again is from Winco Custom Lures. This is a flutter head. This apparatus here screws into the top of your lure, and it allows you to fish fairly well without getting hung up a lot. This is a football head jig. Neat little thing about this, last year at the Great American Outdoor Show, we were doing seminars, and the person who brought the tank in fed the fish, fed them aggressively, so they weren't very active. And the first 2 days, guys were really struggling in the tank, and they weren't getting very many bites. So I took this bait right here, the Winco crinkle cut worm, on this lead head, and I let that drop down in the tank, and then fish couldn't refuse it. Didn't have to move it. Basically what happens is this tail will stand up in that tank like that, and it quivers a little bit, and then fish couldn't refuse it. So that was a really neat experiment for us. So that's the stand-up head. And then this is the Winco River Darter swim bait head. It's got realistic eyes on there. It's another bait that, or another lead head that I really like to use. So right now the water, like I said, I'm going to guess is going to be in the low 50s. So you can fish bigger baits now. So this is a Cabin Creek salty spider jig. We can throw this, and there's also a downsized version. The colder you get, the more you want to downsize your baits. This is a Winco custom tube, a laminated tube. What I like about this is it's got some purple in it. This time of the year, you know, this simulates a crawfish, and this time of the year the crawfish get some blues and some purples in them. So that's a very good bait this time of the year. This is another good cold water bait. It gives you a lot of action, again by Winco Custom Lures. These fibers will breathe in the water, so without you imparting action to the lure, it's already going to have some movement there to entice the fish. You can also skin hook that and make it weedless, so that works very well. Bubba Craw, again, Winco Custom Lures. Again, the Susquehanna River is polluted with the rusty crayfish, and one of the main forages for smallmouth bass in the Susquehanna River is a crayfish, so you can't go wrong. We briefly talked about this. This is the crinkle cut worm, another great bait when I'm jigging. As the water temperature drops, we're going to continue to fish jigs, but we're going to fish slower, much slower. I'm talking when you get into water that's 33 degrees, we've caught them as low as 32.3. We had ice forming on our rod tips, ice forming around the boat, and we were still boating smallmouth. We were walleye fishing, but the smallmouth were still active at that point in time. You know, the myth is in the wintertime, bass don't feed, they become dormant. That's not true. They need to feed, and they're going to feed. What happens is they go into these wintering holes. So the holes you fished all summer long, all fall long, those fish aren't there. They've moved. So that's why I think the impression becomes fish quit feeding. If you can find these wintering holes, those fish are going to be there, and they'll maintain there clear into the spring until you have a dramatic water change or dramatic temperature change, and then they're going to move out of there. So I'm looking for areas that have deep water, and again, deep is relative to the area you're fishing. In the Susquehanna River, deep is 10 feet. So I'm going to look for an area that might be 8 feet plus. I'm going to look for an area that has little to no current and an area that has food. If I can find an area that's got food, little to no current, and has a current seen close by, that's perfect. That's a great place to start fishing. And once you find wintering holes, they're going to be there year after year unless something dramatically changes the bottom or the structure that's in there. So you're looking for deeper water, little to no current, structure, various structure changes, and food. Find that, those fish will be there all winter long. We're going to downsize our baits the colder it gets. So if you look here, that's a tube I'm going to throw today, and as it gets colder, I'm going to throw the smaller version. So you want to downsize your baits. In profile, this is a thicker tube, this is a thinner tube. If I get muddy water, that's where I'll dip that in that chartreuse dipping dye we talked about. When I was throwing the Willy Wannabe, and the colder it gets, now I'm going to throw the Winco Chili Willy. Notice the difference. We're downsizing these baits the colder it gets. Another great lure to throw is also the hair jig. Talked about don't have your blinders on, general rule of thumb. This is a general rule of thumb for winter fishing. Fish slow, Fish the lightest weight possible to achieve the desired result. Typically, I'm going to put the clients on whatever we've been catching fish on. If we've been catching fish on a 1/4 ounce jig head, I'm going to throw an 1/8 ounce. Once I know I can catch them on an 1/8 ounce, I'm going to convert the clients over. The lightest weight possible to achieve the desired result. That's what you want to do with your jig head. The less weight there is there, the less for them to feel when they pick up a bait. The gear I'm going to use is I like to fish the Johnny Morris Carbon Light series. This is a Johnny Morris Signature Series reel. And I like to fish anywhere from 6 foot to 6'6", and I like a medium heavy action with a fast tip for jigging. I'm going to spool this with 10-pound Suffolk braid. The reason you use braid is it's very sensitive. There's no stretch. So as you're dragging that bait, you're going to feel grass, you're going to feel rocks, you're going to feel tires, all that stuff you can feel with braided line. However, the problem with braided line is it's very visible to the fish. If we had a tag here now, I could show you that braided line coming down straight to a jig and you would see everything. So in order to combat the negative effects of the visibility, we fish a fluorocarbon leader. So I'm fishing 10-pound braid and an 8-pound XPS fluorocarbon leader. I want to fish that leader a minimum of 2 feet. I know guys that fish at 8 foot. The problem is the longer the leader, the more you run that knot of your leader through the eye of your rod, and therefore that knot continues to get abused. So at about 2 foot, I can keep my bait down and I don't have to keep running that knot through because I'm rather lazy and I don't check that knot enough. So I keep the leader around 2 foot versus, you know, the 6, 8, 4 foot that other people do. If this were in a tank, you'd now see the braided line come down, then the fluorocarbon would disappear and that jig would just look like it's suspended in the middle of nowhere. So that's the importance of the fluorocarbon line. You're going to fish in cold water painfully slow. Basically, I'm going to throw that lure out, and again, whenever I'm using a spinning outfit, open the bail with your hand, cast it out, close it with your hand. That'll help you avoid line twist. I know a lot of people complain about braided line. They've had trouble with it in the past. The new braids are phenomenal. Try to get used to using them, and your catch rate is definitely going to go up. You're going to feel so much more, you can't believe it. So throw that out, let it hit bottom, close it, and then let it sit. You know, as long as you possibly can, to be honest with you, when you're talking that 33 to 38 degree water temperature. Just move your rod tip maybe 2 inches. That'll slide that bait on the bottom. Let it sit again. I was fishing in a wintering hole with a good buddy of mine. I was getting bit, he wasn't. What happened was we're fishing the same lures, the same hole. I'm looking at him. He seems to be doing okay. He's not catching any fish. So he casts out, lays his rod in the deck, climbs down the bottom of the boat, roots out a sandwich, takes a bite of a sandwich, reaches up and says, "Oh, I got one." So the bottom line was, I said to him, "Willie, what did you learn?" He goes, "I learned if I want to catch fish, I got to eat more food." And that's not exactly the truth. What the truth is he had to slow it down. Once he learned to slow it down, then we were both putting fish in the boat. So in the wintertime, slow it down. Another thing we'll probably try today is a hard jerkbait, a Rapala X-Rap, a Smithwick Suspending Rogue, Lucky Craft Pointer. And what you'll do is we'll throw them out, we'll crank them down in the current. If we have any current, that bait is just going to be there wobbling. You don't overwork it this time of the year. The colder the water, the slower you move the bait. So what we do is we have rod holders on the back of the boat. Sometimes we'll put that bait out there in the current, let it dangle now while we're jigging, and that'll help you put an extra few fish in the boat. So with that all being said, let's go out in the river and see what we can do. Get some smallmouth in the boat.